Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a good Thursday. We'll just give people a couple of minutes to get online and then we'll get started. Please say hi in the comments below so I know who's there. Hey, Mr. Meowpoos. Good to have you on board, a regular. Hey, Mike. How you doing, buddy? Good to have you on board. Joey J. Hi, back. This was a tricky topic for me to condense down into 30 minutes. I just keep wanting to talk about everything. Clario, hi. Oh, and hi from Tassie, Carlos. Great, thanks for tuning in. Okay, looks like it's 1 o'clock. Let's go for it, I think. Let's make this big, make me small. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in and welcome to the WP Quickies series, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. So today we're going to be looking at how to move your WordPress website over to HTTPS. And this one's been recommended by Alan Kessler, so thanks, Alan, for that. But before we get started, make sure to click on the subscribe button below and click on the bell, just so you get notification when we next go online and post more videos. So what are we going to be talking about today? Here's the rough agenda. So we're going to be talking about SSL and HTTPS and how you get that set up with WordPress, and a couple of things you should do after you've got all that stuff up and running. So let's jump to it. So let's take a back step from WordPress and let's look at what is SSL and what is HTTPS anyway, because that does get confusing for some people who are new to this. So the SSL part stands for Secure Socket Layer. And what that does is it adds a layer of encryption to the communications between your browser and a web server. It basically turns the plain and readable HTTP requests into secure encrypted HTTPS communications, making it super difficult for anyone to snoop into the data that you're sending between the browser and the server. So this is done by adding an SSL certificate to your web browser. The SSL certificate is linked to the domain name of your website, and it's issued by a certificate authority, and we'll go into that, we'll touch on that just in a little bit. So the SSL certificate, it comes in the form of a key pair, a private key that only the server knows, and a public key that's given to your web browser so that it can send a secure communication back to the server. So this is all validated by the certificate authority which issued the SSL certificate. I know that sounds a little bit complicated, and I guess it kind of is, but bear with me. I'll try and explain the best as I can. So any site that tries to spoof over HTTPS from a dodgy certificate authority, a non-trusted certificate authority, they're going to be flagged by all the major web browsers, and they're going to see a little box like this. This is the one from Chrome, an early version of Chrome. And you can look at the bottom there. It says the error is error certificate authority invalid. And that just means that the website that's trying to pretend that it's an SSL, valid SSL, A valid secure website is not. It's not been validated by that authority, a valid authority that issued it. So in other words, someone's tried to spoof their own SSL certificate on a web server, and the browsers flagged that. Now, I don't want to go too much into certificate authorities, but I've posted a link in the comments below just for a Wikipedia entry on certificate authorities. And that just tells you the process it goes through about the certificates and the signing and the encryption. So you guys can read up on that in your own time. I don't want to dwell on that in this presentation here. Okay, so you kind of roughly know what SSL means now. It's adding encryption to your web server and changing your plain text HTTP URLs into HTTPS URLs. But I still get some questions. I still get asked by people, why do you need this level of encryption? Because the web's ran on HTTP since the early 90s. And so firstly, I think it makes sense to encrypt data so that no one can snoop, read, and steal it. That's my first response to when somebody asks why do I need an SSL certificate? So just think about all the personal information that your website is dealing with, or you deal with other websites. Think about emails, first name, last name, mother's maiden names, date of birth, phone numbers. If you've got an e-commerce shop, you're talking about other people's shipping addresses and email addresses and phones, and possibly credit card information if you're dealing with that on your own website. So really, you don't want to make that information easy to get at for the hackers or fraudsters. So having encryption there is a great idea. Secondly, having a secure website has been proven to be a significant signal in the Google ranking algorithm. So nowadays, it's almost a must to have your entire website running on SSL, and not just your checkout page and your payment page, your whole website. Studies have been done looking at websites that are very, very similar, almost identical, and those that are running on HTTPS rank higher than those on HTTP. So if for any other reason, even if you don't have personal data that you've got on your website, even just going over to SSL and going to HTTPS can boost you in the Google ranking factors, which is a great thing for everyone. The last reason I think you should have HTTP is that as of 2018/2019, the major browsers, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, they changed the way that they see HTTP, that's the unsecure pages. So if they come across an HTTP page, they actually mark it as not secure. So if you look up at the URL bar on Chrome, Firefox, or Safari now, if you go to an HTTP page, you're going to get a not secure warning in that address bar. And that is really, really bad for your authority, your credibility, and your trust with your customers, especially for new customers. So if you're trying to get new people in to buy, to purchase your service, log into your membership site, sign up to your membership site, having that link that says not secure, that's going to warn a lot of people off, and they're going to go elsewhere that they can find a secure place. So I think those three reasons, I think, are the best reasons that I think you should be moving over to SSL and HTTPS. So that begs the question, where do you get all this stuff from? So where do you get an SSL certificate from? So basically, you get the SSL certificate from your web hosting provider, because it needs to be installed on the web server. So it's going to be installed into that account that you're running your website on. Now, you should never have to pay for an SSL certificate. There's an organization called Let's Encrypt, and they've been running now for 4 or 5 years. And they offer free SSL certificates for everyone. Okay. They've also got modules built into cPanel and Plesk, which is the majority of people will be running on their web hosting account. And so there's really no excuse for a web hosting provider not to offer a free SSL certificate using the Let's Encrypt system. If your hosting provider is asking you to pay for an SSL certificate, then maybe you'd have a think about moving to someone who is embraced this Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt, they're now issuing the most amount of SSL certificates out of all the authorities now, and it's growing exponentially every year. And their goal is basically to get the whole web completely SSL. So definitely check that out. If your web hosting company does provide cPanel or Plesk, and they do have that Let's Encrypt module, then you can just go ahead yourself and request an SSL certificate for your website. It's as simple as it's a wizard. It just takes you through a few steps. It asks about your website name. So is it www? Is it just dot? And it'll take you through that. It'll ask you for a couple of things you have to sign, a couple of agreements, and then you just click a go button, and 2-3 minutes later, your web server has now got an SSL certificate installed, and that's you ready to go for HTTPS. So really, have a look at your web hosting platform, have a look at your cPanel, your Plesk, or whatever else you're using, and just scroll around and see if you've got that Let's Encrypt bit at the bottom. And if you do, then you're good to go, and then just go ahead. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back to your web hosting company and just ask them if they can install a Let's Encrypt free SSL onto the website for you. Okay, so let's get to the meaty part, which is probably why you guys are here. And I'll jump into the questions later after this presentation. I'll get to those. So setting up WordPress with SSL and HTTPS. Now, of course, you have to do the SSL part before this. So get your web server up and running with SSL, and then we can jump into the stage here. Now, it's not really a complex process. A lot of people have this idea of, SSL, certificates, encryption. Oh my goodness, it's just a whole bunch of magic. It's not really. It's pretty easy to get done. As you can see, the cPanel and Plesk have a simple button and wizard, and that gets the SSL. And then setting up WordPress is fairly simple as well. There's a good couple of methods for doing this, and I'll show you the easy methods just now. So probably the simplest method just now, and I'm going to paste the URL for this plugin in the comments down below. There we go. So the simplest method, once you've got your SSL certificate installed on your web server, is to use a simple plugin. And the easiest one for beginners is probably this one here. And it's called Easy SSL, or Really Simple SSL. Now, it is a free version, and it does have some paid pro version as well. But the free version is going to get you running HTTPS. And it really is as simple as installing it and clicking a button. And it will convert your HTTP traffic into HTTPS traffic. Now, it does this on the fly in real time. So all your URLs, your images, all the stuff in your database, your WordPress database, will still have HTTP in them. What this plugin does is it takes that HTTP and it just translates into HTTPS and generates out to the browser. So your content is still HTTP, and this plugin just modifies into HTTPS in real time. Now, sometimes with using this type of real-time moving from HTTP to HTTPS requests, sometimes that can generate something called mixed content warnings. And that's when your browser is expecting an HTTPS page, and within that page, something in that page is still HTTP. Now that could be a JavaScript file, it could be a CSS file, it could be an image file, image URL. That's coming out as HTTP around HTTPS. And what the browser will do is it will put up a little warning sign in the address bar, and it'll just tell you that this web page isn't totally secure. Okay, so the best way to deal with mixed content is to, on that page with the warning, is to pull up your Chrome, your Firefox, your Safari inspector, so you can have a look at the code. And within the page code, the source code, just type HTTP with the 2 dots and the slashes, and have a look through your source code to see which URLs are coming up as HTTP. And it should be fairly easy to identify if that's a theme or a plugin, see where it's coming from, or if it's an image in the database. If it is a theme or a plugin, there's nothing much you can do other than hack things yourself. But the best way is to go directly to the developer and to raise a support request, just to say that you're running a secure website on HTTPS and their plugin is outputting stuff in HTTP and not breaking that secure connection. So that is a really simple, easy way. There's a question here. Is that just using a redirect hook, Will? No, it isn't. It's not using a redirect hook. Well, I guess it is. Not from a server point of view. There's no modifying your htaccess or nginx.conf. It's all doing it in real time in the plugin. So it's doing it internally in PHP. It finds an HTTP and it spits out as an HTTPS. So kind of redirection, but not redirection from server files, if that makes sense. Okay, so that was the easy method. The better / more complicated method is using this plugin here. I'll just paste the URL for that one. So this plugin here, it's called Better Search and Replace. It's from Delicious Brains, and those are the guys who have the plugin WP Migrate DB with the Pro version as well. What this plugin does is it basically allows you to change the content in the WordPress database. And you really want to do that when you're trying to move over to HTTPS, because that's going to get rid of all the HTTP requests completely. So you don't need to have that real-time translating it between the two. Now, yes, the plugin is over 1 year old, but it's still completely safe. So don't worry about that. I know those guys, they do, it does a good job. It doesn't need to change. It just does the one thing and it does it well. So how to use it? Once you've got that installed, you go to the settings page, and right at the top of the settings, you basically want to put your search for as your old HTTP URL in WordPress. And then to replace, you want to put that with the HTTPS. Then make sure you select all the tables and then just click on Run Search and Replace. And that's going to look through all the WordPress tables, finding that search string, the HTTP, and it'll change it to the HTTPS properly and correctly. Now, you need to do this with a plugin because there's certain types of data that WordPress stores in the database called serialized data. And they store a request string, and then the length of that string, and then the data associated with that. So things like your menus, your widgets, they're all stored as your theme against the URL of WordPress. And if you go into the database and start manually changing HTTP to HTTPS stuff within like PHP admin or just search and replace in SQL, it's going to break that length and the number that it stores as serialized data, and it just won't work. Things will go missing. So make sure you use this plugin or something similar to properly change all the stuff in the database. But once that's done, then all the content in your database is now HTTPS, which is great. And so that means that WordPress is going to serve those properly and securely. The next step to do, that after you've updated all the database contents, is you want to tell WordPress now to start using HTTPS as the base URL for all the pages. And you do that in your settings, in the settings general. Third and fourth down from the top there, you'll see WordPress address URL. You want to put in your HTTPS address there, and the site address URL is HTTPS as well. And then save those settings. And WordPress will rebuild all the permalinks. And next time when you visit a page, then the base page will be HTTPS and your domain / whatever your content structure is. What you can do as well, and you don't need to do this, but I would recommend if you want to go completely secure, is within your WordPress-config.php file, wp-config.php file in the comments below there. I'm going to edit that and put this line here, and I'll copy this line into the comments. Give me a second. Okay, back that line into the wp-config.php somewhere at the top and save the file, then refresh WordPress. What this does is when it forces you, when you try to log into the WordPress dashboard, so /wp-admin or wp login.php, and it's going to force that URL that you're logging in with to HTTPS. That just means that nobody can type in HTTP and try and log in unsecurely. So I think it's a great little tip to do, a kind of last thing to do when setting up your WordPress website to be HTTPS. And that's really it for WordPress. There is another better, more advanced way of doing it. using WP-CLI, but that's more kind of server geeky type way of doing it. I might do a WP CLI quickie if people are looking for that, but it does mean having to log into the WordPress website on SSH, Secure Shell. So I'm not going to go into that for today because this is more targeted at basic beginner people. So that's it, your WordPress website. Your server now has an SSL certificate. Your WordPress website content is now HTTP. The base is now HTTPS, sorry, and you're now forcing logins to admin over HTTPS, which means that basically your WordPress website is now HTTPS completely. Just using that simple 3 or 4 steps. But you really want to do another couple of things afterwards. So once you've set your WordPress website to HTTPS, you definitely want to go into Google. And I'm assuming everyone has Google Search Console and Google Analytics at some point linked up with the website. Because Google defines HTTP and HTTP requests as separate things, if you want to keep monitoring your analytics for your website, you need to go into both of these and change them. So first of all, you want to go into your Google Search Console, and I'll paste the link here. So obviously you need to be signed in with your Google account. But go to that URL and then log into your Google Search Console. And then once you're in there, you want to have a look at the top left, and there'll be a menu bar. Bring that down, and it'll tell you all the URLs that it's currently linked with, and you'll probably see your old HTTP one. What you want to do is simply click Add Property, that plus sign with Add Property, and then add the HTTPS value string that you put into your WordPress general settings. Save that, leave it a day, come back, and you should have all your data back as HTTPS within Google Search Console. And then it's up to you. You can delete the HTTP one or just keep it there for historical reference if you want. Similarly, you want to go into your Google Analytics, and I'll post a link for there. It's just analytics.google.com. And you want to do the same. Basically, you want to navigate all the way through to the properties. So that's go to admin at the top, property settings, and then the basic settings. And then right down the bottom, you'll see there's a default URL. And you click that down. It's just a simple, you tell it HTTP or HTTPS. So you want to flip that over to HTTPS, the default URL, save that property, and then again, wait for maybe a day or so for the data to start being collected. And that's it, really. I could have went into a lot more detail, but I want to try and keep this as quick as possible. So I think those are the basics to think about, to cover when you're looking to move your WordPress website in its entirety over to HTTPS. So install your SSL certificate, a free one. Then go into WordPress, and you can use that basic plugin to do an on-the-fly one to HTTPS request. But you might get those mixed content warnings. But the better way is to use the Search and Replace plugin to replace all the data in the WordPress database to HTTPS. Then go to your WordPress settings, make sure your base URLs are now HTTPS. You might want to add that little bit of code to force logins into securely as well. And then, yeah, just go into your external services. Obviously, Google's probably the big one, and just make sure that they're tracking that HTTPS and not the HTTP. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then if you go back to analytics in the next couple of weeks, you're just going to see a blank a blank line at the bottom with no rankings because it's not picking up any HTTP requests. Next week, we have security plugins. So I'm just going to have a look at maybe the top 3 or 4 security plugins, why you need them and what they do and what the basic settings are. So if you want to join me next week, you certainly are feel free to do that. Also, I'd love it if you suggest more topics for these quickies. I've got quite a few already, but yeah, I'd love more. So there's a Google Forms there, and it's also in the description underneath the video, and a QR code there that will bring up the form. So, and yeah, please suggest some topics that you think we'll be able to cover in 30 minutes. I'll leave that up on the screen for a little bit. And I'll go and have a look at some questions. Okay, let's see. Who did I miss? Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Sorry I missed you there. I was quite keen to launch into the presentation. I want to keep these as quick as possible. Carlos. Google officially acknowledges the positive SEO impact of using encryption on your site. Yes, yes, it does. Yeah, they have come out and said it is a major factor. And these big internet bodies like Microsoft and Amazon and Google and all these, Facebook, Twitter, all these guys, they really are pushing to make the whole web safe, whole web secure. So they're part of the consortium that is linked in with this Let's Encrypt organization. So yeah, it's definitely a major ranking factor, Carlos, you're right. Cloud, I dealt with that one, so it's like a real-time redirect, yep, for that simple plugin. Joey, oh, he uses the really simple SSL plugin, great. What if I delete this plugin? Does it all go back to HTTP? Yeah, it does, yeah. If you set your base URL in WordPress to HTTPS, then when you visit your website initially, it will still go over to HTTPS, but any subsequent pages that you try and navigate through in the structure, any content that's in your database is HTTP, that's going to come out as HTTP, and without that plugin, then yep, it will be just normal, plain, unencrypted requests. So yeah, I would suggest just going through that process of the search and replace, and then just move all your content away. Then you don't need that plugin anymore. But remember to make a backup of your website before you do that. Maurice, well, if the site is set up as SSL from the beginning, do I need to still use the plugins and change those configs? No, you don't. If you've got a WordPress website that's SSL, and in your general settings, it's going HTTPS, it's a brand new website, you start creating content, then from that point on, all the content is going to be saved in your WordPress database as HTTPS URL link. So no, you don't need that plugin. That's a great question. So it's always a great idea if you're launching a new website to just like go SSL completely at the beginning, because then you don't have to worry about all these issues of translating stuff afterwards. Elizabeth, so the best plugin to use would be Better Search Replace. I've used that on a lot of websites. It's from Delicious Brains. I trust those guys. They've been quite regulars at the meetups here in Sydney and at WordCamps all over Australia. So they're highly trusted guys. And yes, the plugin is a year old, but you know, sometimes plugins don't need to be updated all the time because they just do like one thing. You know, all that plugin does is look through the database and change stuff from one value to another. So unless something major happens with the database structure with WordPress, then you know the plugin's just going to work as is. So yeah, I would certainly recommend using that one. But again, remember to back up your website before you do any mucking around with database stuff. Maurice, secondly, is Let's Encrypt good enough for commerce buy sell website? That's a great question, and I think we've got some time just to explain SSLs a little bit more. It's on team. Okay. Before Let's Encrypt happened, I'll just put myself on full screen. Before Let's Encrypt came along, there were lots of different websites that sold different types of SSL certificates. So you could get an SSL certificate, a basic one, an extended, an EV, an EV+. Some of those came with liability, so up to $1 million liability if it was proven that somehow having the certificate, somebody still hacked into your traffic. So it was never ever proven. So all these like EV certificates and plus certificates with all this liability is complete waste of money because no one ever took any court to case as far as I'm aware. But if you drill it down to the very, very basic what an SSL certificate does, all it does is it encrypts traffic. Okay, so it doesn't matter what type of SSL certificate and who you get it from, it does the same basic job as it encrypts data. So it doesn't matter if you're running an e-commerce site, a blogging site, an enterprise level multinational corporate conglomerate, an SSL certificate does exactly the same thing. It encrypts data. So yes, Let's Encrypt service is an SSL. It does exactly the same as all the other SSLs out there that you can pay thousands of dollars a month for. So yeah, it is good enough. Absolutely, and that's a great question. Carlos, how do you manage encryption when working on a local environment? That is a really, really good question. And let me hunt around on my website, because I have written an article on my website. So I'm running Windows 10 on my site, and there is a way that you can actually become your own certificate authority and then issue certificates for your own local websites. There we go. Let me copy this link. Oops, copy link. And let me come back to StreamYard, not post that in. There we go, Carlos. You can have a read through that. It's a bit of a technical read. But yes, I don't know about Mac. I presume it works the same way because Mac kind of runs Linux, so you could create your own Let's Encrypt authority on there. But if you're on WordPress, if you follow the instructions on there, then yeah, you can. The basic concept is you become your own certificate authority, like Let's Encrypt, and then once you've got that, you can issue certificates for your local dev sites. So yeah, have a read of that. Hope that covers that question. Paul, any considerations for securing subdomains? Yes, so Let's Encrypt, when it first came out, it was just a normal one-string URL, but now you can issue certificates for subdomains, and you can also do wildcard as well. So you could, within cPanel and Pless, you can issue a wildcard SSL for star.mydomain.com.au, and that would cover everything that you want to do with that website, so subdomains and everything. So yeah, that's all done within the cPanel module. AB, he uses, or she uses, a really simple SSL plugin. Should I still change the configs? I presume you mean the settings for WordPress? Yeah, you should do that. Totally do that. And that means all the content from then is going into your database as HTTPS. There's just less to replace. So yeah, do that. Change those base URLs. But yeah, I would still always recommend going down the route of changing all your content in the database, just so you're not getting that mixed issue. Or if for whatever reason that plugin stops becoming available, then you're back to the HTTP. So yeah, I think it's like a stopgap measure. I think going down the search replace is a better thing to do. Let's see, Paul. Yeah, I think I answered that. Yes, Let's Encrypt now does support wildcard subdomains. Yeah, it does. Carlos, yep, you're welcome, mate. Morris, yep, you're welcome. That's good. Yep, settings. Okay, guys, I think that's it. We're reached past. No more questions there. Thanks very much for all your questions. That was good. I really enjoyed the one about the SSL. Is it good enough for commerce stuff? Because it's something I was going to put in the presentation, but I pulled it out because I thought it might take a little bit too long. But yeah, I'm glad someone asked about that. So yeah, just a reminder: SSL certificate is an SSL certificate. So a horse is a horse, car is a car. It does the same thing, gets you from A to B. Yes, you can get more expensive ones, but essentially they do the same thing. So why wouldn't you get a free one? Okay, thank you guys. So next week we have the security plugins. Please join me for that if you're interested in doing the security stuff. And then, yeah, please ask for more topics. Let me know some more topics that I can cover in WordPress stuff. And that'll be great. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your questions. Thanks for joining in. I'm going to call this one a wrap for today, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much, guys, and have a good Thursday. Bye.